Garden.
Hey, welcome to Torture Garden. I'm Scott,
I'm Jimmy.
and today we thought we would have a conversation that was sparked by the latest revelation in what I call Opeth Gate, or I guess Prague Gate. It's something I've thought about since. If you're not aware, Opeth is a Swedish death metal, Swedish death metal band. Started out were one of the biggest names in progressive death metal for a long time. Incorporated folk elements, really crafted a really unique sound, and went through a period where they started to, some of the things Michael Akerfeldt said before one of their records, Heritage, was that they were kind of going towards a more progressive sound, and that kicked off fans and him kind of going back and forth in interviews and comments and whatever about the fact that he full-blown embraced prog rock and full-blown kind of gave up the death metal side, and fans are pissed. I've literally seen some people in my circles say that they want to burn their Opeth merch. I'm not kidding. Literally said that.
That's not an extreme reaction at all.
Exactly. But all that suffice to say, and Michael Akerfeldt's mastermind, his reaction this whole time has been making comments saying, "Yeah, I don't really get the hate. Who cares?" And this just kind of gives the background to kind of a bigger question I had, which is really, it sounds simple, but I think there's a lot of layers in there. Is what do fans and artists owe each other? And I think that can go in a number of different directions, obviously, because obviously the fan-artist relationship is interlinked. They bring different things to the table, obviously, but it is somewhat contingent upon one specific factor being the music. What role does a true fan, or even just a regular fan, have in terms of supporting the artist or whatnot? And just kind of one last thing to read. This is what really kicked it off for me. Is he was interviewed. They've now released 3 albums of just basically straight prog rock.
Shitty prog rock too.
Yeah, so it's not great. But then they interviewed him about I guess Eon Music. It's a European publication I'm not completely familiar with, but he said. Sorceress for me this is their last record, is Old Hat. It's a lovely record, but it's back there. I'm not lingering on it because it's old now. I'm not lingering on this record as being a beacon of hope for anything. It's just what we did then, and I'm hoping next time we're going to do something different. And I hope something twisted. Nothing necessarily great, but twisted at least. And that's just kind of the interesting thing for me, is that he literally said he doesn't expect the next album to be great.
Yeah,
that's not paraphrasing. It's a direct quote from them. And so, I guess to start off this conversation, what do fans and artists owe each other, or what do they owe each other? When do you give up on an artist? You've supported them, they've given you music you've loved and have been incredible, and you've really benefited from developing your own taste, or personally or emotionally, and then suddenly they take a sharp turn. When is it okay to give up on an artist, or honestly, is there even a time frame?
I don't think you should ever give up on an artist. And I mean, that comes to, I have a lot of opinions about musicians that I don't like. There are a lot of musicians I don't like, but if they come out with something that sounds interesting to me, I'm still gonna give it a try. Mm-hmm. And even though Opeth, the last couple albums have not been good for me, and let me just say, it's not because it's prog rock. It's not because Akerfeldt isn't growling in it. It's because the songwriting really just does not resonate with me at all. I think it's very poor songwriting. Yeah. I think they're basically just rehashing stuff that's been done in the 70s. But I really love Opeth's old music. Now, I used to really not like them too, and I think it's just I'll wait for if they make a good prog album, I'll stand by it. I don't I think it's sort of immature in a way to and unfair to the artist too to, like just give up on someone like that. It's
Yeah.
like, because I think, nobody makes the same album twice. Even someone like AC/DC, who, whose music sounds very similar album to album. There's always minute differences, and you never know when an artist might just pull something out of their hat. Like, I mean, like we were talking about the new Leprous album a couple days ago, and just like I was surprised on how much, like, because I mean I was not a Leprous fan before then. I gave them a try too, and like, but fuck, that new album is like totally blew me away. So it's like I'm not going to give up on somebody. It's more like I'm just going to say, hey, sort of just shrug at this album cycle, come back later. Or maybe, somebody might see it in a different way. Like, last year with the new Danny Brown album, I wasn't really a fan of it at first. And then after Fantano made it like his album of the year, I looked back at it and gave it another couple tries, and I fucking love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what do you think?
I think in the past it would make more sense to give up on an artist. Back before streaming, before digital music became as prevalent as it was. You had to buy, especially for underground music. You can argue for, like Prince, for example. Like, you can hear most of his stuff on the radio on any given album, most likely, especially in the high point of his career. So you could tell whether or not you'd like the new album. So that's fair. But for underground artists, you really had to buy their album. You had to buy the CD if you wanted to hear them, or borrow a tape from a friend or whatever. But of course, that's that depends on what they have. So if after 1, 2, 3 albums, an artist you've been following starts to suck and you really don't like them, then it makes sense that next time around I'm not going to get burned again. But in today's day and age, with Spotify and YouTube and even piracy, obviously that's not a great option. And you and I don't really pirate music, but it's still an option. I don't think, especially if Opeth had a long career before this change. They had, I don't even know how many albums they had before. I would say close to 10 albums. I don't know if it's quite that many, but
it might be more.
Yeah, but they had an incredible body of music before they took this turn, and it was all music that fans loved. So especially in the age where you literally just go on Spotify and listen, you don't even have to listen to the whole thing. I don't think, obviously you don't have to like it. By no means do you have to like it. But to completely give up on an artist and not, listen to the new project, not listen to, what they have to offer, I don't see the point in that. I think as a fan, you do owe it both to an artist and yourself to see, what they might come through with. However,
you go ahead.
However, I do think that there are things that artists can do to kind of turn you off from giving them a chance. Like, I think the reason I picked this Opeth example is because I think it really does touch on several aspects of this issue. Because I actually didn't pull up the interview to see what exactly he said. But basically, when people said, "Oh, like I hate that the death metal's gone," I hate that you used to synthesize death metal and prog metal so nicely, and now you're just making boring prog rock. And then his response in an interview, he said, "I never got that claim because to me it's all heavy metal." And he referenced, like Deep Purple and like stuff like that. And it's such a tone deaf comment. Like, he's making it seem like, the music he's making, it's like, 70s heavy metal. Like, why aren't fans happy? It's like, because that's not the same as, death metal, obviously. So it just, for a lot of fans, it was a little tone deaf that he didn't seem to understand why fans were not, stoked. And so other bands have done that too, where they get really pissed if fans don't come along with their new sound. And I think that's to me is where the difference lies. Is I do think you owe it to a band, especially a band that, like you said, like I said, is giving you a lot of emotional depth with their music, has really provided a lot of great memories or whatever, great albums. I think in today's day and age, you do owe it to listen to that music. But artists cannot expect fans to like it, especially if they go down a completely different route. Like, no artist can expect their fans to enjoy their music for any reason, even if they don't change styles.
It's worth saying that you have to be a fan of it too, because I mean, like, I think we've used this example for me a bunch of times, but Kendrick Lamar, like, I'm not really a fan of his. So like when Damn was starting to come out, like I just sort of just
Yeah,
didn't bother with it,
exactly.
because I'm really just not interested in him. If something does get enough praise in like if I hear he's going into a direction that I might really be interested in, I'll absolutely give it a second chance. But
Exactly.
I feel like it's sort of stupid to if you're gonna listen to everything there ever was, you're not gonna have any time to do anything else. It's
Exactly.
literally impossible. So just pick and choose. But like if you're already a fan of an artist, like they still have something there.
Exactly. I
You know.
think in a similar vein, Kanye West for me.
Yeah.
With his obviously, I've given all of his albums a fair shake, except for The Life of Pablo. I didn't listen to that in its entirety because I did not like the route he started to go down on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Yeezus, it got a lot worse. And I made it partway through Life of Pablo, and I was like, I just don't, I'm not a huge, I like Kanye's back catalog. I'm not a huge Kanye fan. So when it started to get to some really bad cuts on that album, I was like, I don't want to waste my time. But like, I'm not a fan. Like, I think if you're the dedicated fan of an artist, you do owe it to yourself and to them to kind of see what they're doing.
Well, I see. I went into this conversation thinking like a little bit about because there always is this idea that artists owe fans something or fans owe artists something, and honestly, I think that's sort of bullshit, and I think it's sort of a moot point, because I think by the very act of listening is already like reciprocation, and that's really like that's really what artists and fans do. Artists make music, the fans reciprocate it. That they listen to it, they tell their friends, or they support the artist, and it just, it's this cycle. I just think it's almost like a moot point. It's very moot in a way for me.
I think it depends a little bit because I know a lot of not as much anymore because the circles I run in now do support music in terms of purchasing it. But back in high school, a lot of my friends would just download entire discographies, and I think if you have that reciprocation in terms of a streaming service, like something of that sort, to support the artist, the fact that they made music and to check it out.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't support illegal downloading by any means, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of those people you're hanging out with bought a lot of their merch and went to go see them live too.
some of them.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But yeah, no, I definitely think that if you like an artist, you should at least listen to them in some legal capacity.
Yeah, exactly. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, you are right. In my opinion, I do think that you owe it to give a long time. If you're a long time fan, you owe it to the artist to at least give them a chance. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think an artist can expect, like I said, their fans to be on board with their new sound. But also, I don't think, I think we mentioned we don't like Opeth's new prog rock style, but like it doesn't upset me. I mean, he can do whatever
Yeah,
he wants,
exactly.
and he has like a ton of albums in the past that do that sound well.
Yeah, I mean, I can just listen to Ghost Reveries all day, man, and just be happy with that.
Yeah,
So,
same with me with Blackwater Park. If that was the only Opeth album I owned. I do own a few other ones, but like if that was the only one I owned, that'd be fine. I love that album.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. There have been plenty of artists that have disappointed me with their latest releases.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think.
the new Depeche Mode comes to mind
Yeah,
for me.
but that's the thing for me is Disclosure, for example. They're a great British house band. Made some really great dance music. They debuted in 2013.
Classics.
No, Disclosure.
I thought for some reason I thought you were talking about like almost like a caveat, like
Oh no, no, yeah,
disclosure
no.
before I go into this.
No, Disclosure. They're
okay.
they're a British house duo. And they made some great dance music. One of my favorite albums of 2013. And then 2015 rolls around. I think I'm pretty sure it was 2015, and they released an album called Caracal. and it was one of the most disappointing follow-ups I've ever heard from any artist. It just they went from making really energetic, lush dance music to, mid-paced, subpar R&B basically, and it just was not great. And they did something I hate, where they released 5 great singles, and they were literally all in a row at the front of the record.
I hate when they do that in any capacity, even if it's a bad single. I don't want to hear the first 5 tracks just be the first 5 singles. Like I want to hear a mixture, because that's sort of why I like not listening to singles in a way, because I like going into an album blind.
I've actually stopped listening to lead singles for that reason.
There are only a few bands that I would actually listen to singles from.
Yeah.
Like Depeche Mode would be one of those, just because they're a really good singles band.
Yeah.
As well, it's just they're just a great overall band in my opinion. But yeah, no, that is a little bit annoying. You know what I keep thinking about this is like how we always think that like I think it's a little stupid of us in a way to think that artists owe fans anything though. Because I'm looking at it from the viewpoint of an artist. I mean, like I personally, I'm trying to make a career writing fiction, and personally, I don't write for an audience. Like I don't write thinking, oh, people are gonna love this, and like, I write for me. I write because I like it, and I'm not gonna put anything out that I don't like. I want my stamp to be on anything that comes out that has my name on it.
Yeah.
And so I think I think what fans sometimes fail to realize is that a lot of artists do what they do for themselves. Yep. That they have their own sense of creativity that they want to explore, and sometimes that doesn't always align with what the fans want.
Exactly.
And sometimes it does. I mean, like I think of like Bruce Springsteen as a great example, because he's he's very, very fair to his fans. Like he's extremely, extremely nice to them. Like you should there are great stories about him. Like he'll do a lot of really long concerts just because he knows the fans want to hear him.
Exactly.
So I respect the hell out of that. But I think we have to realize that not all artists are in it because they want to be rich and famous and everything. Some people just want to make music.
Exactly. And to go back to my Disclosure example, obviously their sophomore album, I was really disappointed, didn't like it, but they released a follow-up EP, I think 1 or 2 years later, and it kind of was back to what I wanted. And that was really easy to give that a chance. I was disappointed by their sophomore album, but kind of like you said, that was the album they wanted to make. There were some great songs on it. I enjoyed it. Didn't enjoy it overall, but it's really easy to listen to any of their projects. I mean, right on Spotify, dropped. Give it a chance. If I don't like it, move on. There's plenty of other. It's not like these artists live in a genre vacuum.
Yeah.
There are very few artists where it's not like Opeth are the only band mixing progressive metal and death metal, especially nowadays. I mean, at the time they came out, it was very unique, but now it's not unique at all.
Well,
so
I think with the invention of Bandcamp, I don't think anything's really unique in a way.
Exactly, yeah. So like if it was a matter of this band who does the only band who does this sound or this genre or style, and then they're not doing it anymore, that might suck. But there are plenty of bands you could listen to in place of Opeth. Or any band you mentioned, if they go off the rails or don't do anything, like Metallica. I think Metallica is one of the best examples of a long stretch of albums that many fans are disappointed with. But do you know how many fucking great thrash bands there are nowadays?
Oh yeah.
Or like if you're a thrash fan, this is one of the best times. There's so many new thrash bands out there.
Oh
so
yeah.
It sucks that Metallica. Of course, then you can argue that some of their more recent output people think is better, and then whether or not that's just because of what came before or whatever. Anyway, I would argue that, but that's not what we're talking about.
But a little sidebar though, I will note that I think the Reload albums are actually a little underrated. They certainly aren't Metallica's best by any means, but like I think of them like I think of like the Star Wars prequels. Like they're not good, but they're not absolutely abysmal. But
Yeah,
anyway, like
it's
go
one of
on.
those things where I think that that's kind of the issue too. Is that I mean every band has that. I can't think of a single artist. Of course, with an extensive discography, because bands with they're relatively new, it's kind of hard to judge this. But with bands with a big discography, there's at least one album that kind of sucks, or that's your least favorite, or just like isn't up there, or is literally like abysmal. Every band has it, and
I'm trying to think of a band that doesn't have it. I think, well, at least for me, like maybe Dillinger. Uh, but
actually, I can't think of a. I mean, I think all their albums are really good.
Yeah, I think Calculating Infinity is probably my least favorite.
Yeah.
So
But that's the
I
thing.
love
That's the
that.
thing is like it doesn't necessarily have to be that one is terrible. There's one album
Yeah.
that like is your least favorite. I mean,
Yeah.
So to expect, I think Metallica fans they were spoiled by the fact that they released 4 of the most acclaimed thrash metal albums in a row. And I think they had that run. So the fact that they dipped into something different really, it was a bad follow up in their eyes. But
The Black Album's good too, though.
that's divisive on Fletch
I mean,
fans, which I think is bizarre because
it's not thrash. It's not to the level of like the face melting thrash that they were doing before. But I mean,
but
like,
yeah,
I mean-
I do think it's bizarre that it is divisive because I mean, yeah, it's not, but it's still a solid, like it's not a bad album by any means.
I think it's because a lot of metal fans find it to be normie.
I
And it's
guess, but
like they're sort of being hipsters with it. They're like, oh, if it's popular, it's not good.
exactly, but like that bothers me because it's not my favorite Metallica album, but like you can't tell me that's a bad album. Like any of their follow-ups to that, Load Reload, I can understand if you think it's a bad album, but the Black Album is for what it is, it's a solid project at the least. But I think that's the thing is that fans build this expectation of what a band can be, and I can't think of many bands that have literally made the same exact thing for the entire of their career.
AC/DC.
AC/DC, yeah.
I mean,
well, actually, I can't think of. Well, the second part, what I was gonna say, I can't think of bands that have done that and kept all their fans, because that's the fickle. Okay, fine, we'll go with that. But that's the thing is fans are fickle about that. Is that they don't, especially in metal, they don't want their favorite bands to change that much, but they still want them to change up a little bit and not make the same album over and over again.
Yeah.
So like after a while, they give these bands a really really small window to work with because they can't do something. They can't really experiment and do something really outside of what they have been doing. But they also can't just regurgitate the same album. Of course, there are bands like Cannibal Corpse that they have a fan base that will they'll gobble up whatever the fuck make literally the same fucking thing over again, and fans will love it. But
again, like AC/DC.
Exactly. Yeah. See, that's some great contributions to me. You just
Thank you. Yeah, I'll say it a couple more times. No, actually, it's So now we think about it, I think I think what fans owe artists, if anything, I really don't think they owe them anything. At least in a certain degree. I think that it's worth if you're really a fan of a band, just give them a try. Even if you think that their new stuff sucks, I mean, it might not always be that way.
Exactly. I mean, for me, a good example of kind of me falling off the wagon a little bit with the band is Suffocation. I mean, Suffocation are one of my favorite death metal bands. They're fantastic at mixing, technical death metal with, verging on brutal death metal, and they're really great. But Pinnacle of Bedlam, which came out a couple years ago, it was okay. It was fine. Then they released an album this year, which also was, it's okay. It was fine. So while I'm not as excited about it, before you mentioned new stuff, like after Blood Omen, or I think, or one of their previous albums, if you mention New Suffocation, I'm like, oh fuck, like I gotta listen to this right now. I may not jump on it right away, but I'm still gonna listen to it. There's no reason not to. I just open up Spotify, when I go to work. Okay, what do I want to listen to? Put it on. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen all the way through. But,
exactly.
And I think that's the problem with, kind of that, when fans give their favorite bands too small a window, because some of the biggest, my favorite albums are surprises, that came out of nowhere. I mean, you talk about Pantera fans. I mean, we wouldn't even have the modern Pantera fan if they hadn't gone out of what they had been doing before.
Yeah.
And
actually, that would be funny to see.
that'd be very interesting if they just did their own thing. Or like Ministry. Ministry had a big change in their sound. They went from like, straight up just electronic music to going to industrial metal. That creates a new fan base. Someone like Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails has made some incredible albums, but Trent Reznor has also deviated from just making straight up industrial rock and industrial metal. He's gone to some interesting territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does that under a couple different names.
True.
Arguably,
yeah.
that I think, like, he does soundtracks and stuff under his own name, and
But
then.
even the main discography Nine Inch Nails album, that sound has changed quite a bit. And he's done a lot of different things with that blueprint. He's not just making Pretty Hate Machine over and over again.
I tend to think of it like in like two phases, that like, or at least maybe even three if you count Pretty Hate Machine. I think Pretty Hate Machine is sort of like something in its own little bubble. Mm-hmm. But like I think like you have like Downward Spiral and The Fragile, which are like more like industrial metal, and then when he comes back with Teeth. Mm-hmm. I think it's more like industrial rock. Like I think that
sure.
there's definitely a separation there, but
yeah.
I'm not going to go into that. I do now that I think about it, I think that there's I think artists owe their fans something, but I don't think I think when people ask that question and when you think about that question, usually what comes to mind is like, oh, you have to pander to your fans, and that's not what I'm saying at all. I think that but what I do think that musicians should do in particular is make their music available to people to listen to. I think that's what they owe their fans. Like if you get a huge fan base and then decide to go all Wu-Tang and like make a single album and sell for $1 million and don't let anybody else ever listen to it, you're sort of a dick, But I think that like if you don't want to release music, that's fine. But like don't tell people in a way like because I was thinking about this morning. John Frusciante, who is one of the lead guitarists for the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in the day. I remember seeing this article of him saying like, oh yeah, I'm retiring from releasing music. I'm still going to record it and stuff. And I'm like, why the fuck do you even mention that?
I remember that article, and it was really, it was just kind of one of those stories. It was like, okay. What? Like I didn't gain anything from that other than just why.
Yeah, like I mean, that's the thing, and it's like he has a pretty solid fan base. I don't think not the biggest fan base by any means, but the people who do like his music are very devoted to him, mm-hmm. and I think it's just like a dick move to just say, hey, here's the carrot, and then just hide it,
And it's so weird because like why wouldn't you release it? You don't have to tour behind it. You don't have to, just. But like, why would you not, if you're making it anyway and recording it? Like, why would you not?
I think that we can't really answer that question because we're not the artist. I think that's something that's really ultimately up to the artist's decision. Like, for example, there's that Deftones album that they were working on around the time Chi Chang died, or when he got into the car accident. I forgot what it's called now. And
oh shit.
I know, right?
Like Eros?
Yeah, Eros. Yeah. And that thing's been on the shelf for years and years now.
But
it's
that makes sense to me. I can understand why they did that though.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's nonetheless their choice to do it. Like me personally, like I haven't submitted anything for publication yet. Because I just don't feel like it's the right time. Mm-hmm. Like, there's some stuff that I write that, I know will never see publication, even if someone read it and was like, you should publish this. Like, there's some stuff that's just mine, and I'm fine with that. I think that's another thing artists or fans owe artists is that, like, patience, that because, to be creative and to be an artist is not an easy thing. I mean, it's and I think people get a really warped view of it because like there's that whole idea of touring and being having to go around the country and around the world years at a time and never seeing your family. Like there's that aspect of it, but there's also just the psychological impact of just trying to create something, and it kills people. I mean, it literally kills people sometimes. I mean, it drives people to suicide.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing for anybody to do. So to go and say, oh, like, why aren't you doing this or that, or why aren't you releasing something yet, is just really, really, like, it's an asshole move to do. Like, as much as I want like a new Scott Walker album, the guy works on his own time. Yeah. And it's because he cares about his work, and he wants it to be the best.
Absolutely.
And so I'm ready to wait as many years as it takes. I mean, like, if you want to go back to fiction, Patrick Rothfuss is famous for his revisions. That, like, he's working on his third book right now for this series, and it's been like close to a decade, I think, since it came out. And just like there's just no sign of it even coming close. And it like it's not like he doesn't put the work in. It's just that, like, he really like, he sends it out to beta readers constantly. Like, I remember reading this section that went over, like, how many revisions certain books went over. There was one that, like, had like 0. Like Vonnegut never really revised his stuff. He did it like by the chapter in a way, so by the end of the book it was just done. But Patrick Rothfuss's first book went over like 1,000 revisions or something like that.
Wow.
So it's just like if you love an artist enough, you got to just wait for him. Like, I mean, I was frustrated that it's been like 5 years since a new Converge album, but new one coming November. So
exactly, and I think
which we're reviewing that, by the way.
Yes, I'm very excited for that one.
Yeah.
But Scott Walker, that was a great example to bring up, because obviously, he started out in a very, very different spot than he is now, and throughout his career, he was like a pop icon.
Oh yeah.
He started getting more Baroque elements and a little bit more experimental, and now he makes straight up avant-garde music, very bizarre, out there stuff. And even though he what
I was just remarking, like, I was listening to Buzzers this week off of Drift, the one that's like polish the fork and stick the fork in.
Yeah.
I love that line, but yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, go on.
No, I was just gonna say that obviously he lost his mainstream audience when he started doing really bizarre things, but he gained a new audience. He gained other people who were not into his pop stuff back in the day, or obviously weren't alive or weren't paying attention to music at that point, and now he has a new following. So, but I think either or, that doesn't really matter to him. It's obvious he's one of those artists making what he wants to make, and I think that's important for artists to do and for fans to understand, is that these are artists. These are people who want to create, and you can't expect them to be the same or to want to create the same music over and over and over again.
I think sometimes there are some artists that, like, I think it comes to sort of your target audience, because I think that's something I always hear is like, oh, you have to write for your target audience, and I'm like, no, fuck that. Like,
no. I mean,
like, I think, and to be fair, I think some people do, and I think more power to them for that, but that doesn't work for everybody.
Exactly, and but along the same token, artists, I think, should have that freedom. They should be able to do what they want to do. They can't expect fans to be totally on board with it. And that's not to say fans should, I think people who just make dumb like that, I'm going to burn my Opeth merch. Like, that's not constructive. Like, what help is that kind of, and that that's an actual thing someone said. And to me, obviously, if you want to write a negative review or like something constructive or whatever, or just in general, talking with friends and saying, I just don't like it for these reasons, you don't have to like it. Obviously, I don't think you should unjustly, shitpost on it. But, an artist can't expect, Scott Walker's mainstream audience back in the day, I do not expect them to enjoy Bish Bosh. Well, I would be shocked. I mean, maybe there's some crossover appeal.
Yeah, there's a little. I know David Bowie was a fan before he went all weird, and I think David Bowie was still a fan afterwards.
Well,
so.
that makes sense. That's Bowie for you.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I think that it's one of those things where, artists, fans should not expect artists to completely, just release the same derivative thing over and over again. But artists can't, they should have the freedom to experiment. But your fans might not come with you. But I again, kind of like what you said, I don't think that should matter. If you really are approaching art in a way that is your own creation, is something that you feel passionate about, it shouldn't matter. Like, the formula shouldn't be, what are my fans going to think about this? Like, I don't think that is nearly as important as this is the music I want to make. And there are some sacrifices with that. Especially if you drop a sound that really drew people to your music in the first place. But if that's what you want to make, that's what we want to make. And some fans will enjoy it. There's an audience for everything. However small.
I mean, look at it. I mean, there's a bunch of people who ironically love The Room. I mean,
exactly.
I don't really understand their logic behind it whatsoever, but more power to them.
Exactly. Well, there's people who ironically like artists like rappers like Lil B or whatever, because like they're so bad they're good. Like Bass God or whatever, and like LOL, isn't that funny? Like, I don't get that at all. I think it's dumb. I don't want to listen to someone who's bad for the sake of it. Like, to me, that's a waste of time. But if people like it, that's fine, and that's the music you want to make, then whatever. And if one of for example, if Danny Brown decided to like make Little B like meme rap, I would be sad. But if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do.
I feel like Danny Brown is a talented enough artist that he'll even make something shitty like meme rap into something really good.
That's fair. I would be interested to hear it, but probably I don't know if given my history with meme rap, I don't think that I would.
If you think about it, Danny Brown is sort of already a meme in a way, like in his own way, like not like copy pasta like all the other trap artists, but like he's a character.
He's a character, but at least he has. I think he's actually another great example because, if you listen to Old, for example, there was a lot of, like trap bangers and party bangers. And then you have followed up with Atrocity Exhibition. He really is a good example of someone who just, does what he does. Does what he wants to does. Okay, that's.
To be fair, that's probably how Danny Brown would say it.
That's true. That's true.
All I can think of is that Hot Ones interview that he does, and he like takes out his his grill and like eats the chicken wings by just sliding them through his mouth.
Oh God,
that was so fun. Oh my God, I think that's such a great interview.
I love watching Danny Brown speak. It's amazing.
Yeah, dude, he's just like, I think what I love about him is just that like he just refuses to be pinned down under like any label, like because like someone could go like, oh he does that tough gangster rap stuff, but it's like, dude, he has like a bunch of cats and he plays video games all the time and he wishes he was a Dragon Ball Z character. Like, holy fuck, man! Like, it just like I just love that he's just himself and he loves doing that.
Exactly. Oh man.
Yeah.
So right. Yeah, I mean, I think we basically talked around this topic, but for me, the TLDR is that it does suck. It really sucks when an artist changes direction, and especially if you were a longtime Opeth fan and suddenly your favorite band is making bad prog rock, like that's gotta suck. And I feel
I mean,
I feel you.
Personal story, like I love Depeche Mode. I have literally every Depeche Mode album. I've listened to them many times. I was so excited for Spirit to come out this year, and it was really disappointing. and mostly just because of the lyrical content, because like they've in the past made really good political statements before, but this just seems so half-assed. Like they were just like, oh hey, look, 2017 sucks, let's just comment on that. To be fair, I think everybody's sort of doing that this year.
Yeah, it's kind of a common theme. But I mean, the next Depeche Mode album, you're gonna give it a try, right?
Oh, definitely. I'm probably gonna end up buying it too.
Exactly.
Just because like I just I love I have too much respect for the band to not just be like it's been a while since I've listened to Spirit. To be fair, like I do want to give it another try because there were some solid tracks in the middle of it, but like for the most part it was sort of flaccid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the key is that I understand it sucks and it's not great when someone you follow for so long does something completely different that you don't like, but it's worth giving them a shot. There's no, especially in today's day and age with Spotify and whatnot, there's really no excuse not to.
I can think of one artist that you could probably excuse, John Zorn.
Well, yes, because
but I think he's very much the exception to the rule, just because everything that he releases you can't really listen to online.
And he
releases like 5 stuff a year.
Time. Yeah,
exactly.
Like
it's nuts. It's really tough to find it, and like it's pretty expensive too to buy it.
Yeah, unless you buy. That's why whenever I see a cheap John Zorn album in a store or whatever, I grab it. Like, I don't even care what the genre is. If it's there, I'm gonna grab it because that's not. Usually they have all new stuff that's at least like $12, $13.
Yeah,
and that's kind of expensive to not to like
I mean, it's also worth mentioning that, like, I think when it comes to experimental artists like that, they always switch things up every so often. Like, look at Over. Like, who expected them to come out with an album like they did this year?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that was way out of left field. Even the new Steven Wilson album was, like, a bit of a shock to some people.
Yeah, it was a shock to me that people enjoyed it.
I finally got around to listening to it this week. And I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's a perfect album by any means, but I think Oliver from Deep Guts really put some really good words on it. That it sort of just falls off like halfway through. But you're not much of a Steven Wilson fan anyway.
I haven't listened to much of his stuff, and to be honest, I've only listened to one song off the album. I forget which one it was, but it literally, to me, it sounded like a Christian rock band covering like a Final Fantasy like battle or like theme music, and I was like, I cannot, I don't want any part of this.
Do you remember how Katy Perry got started making a Christian album?
Yes.
Yeah,
I do.
It'd be really funny to see like the opposite happen to Steven Wilson, that he ends up making an actual Christian album.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. Like what a great twist.
Like that's something that I feel like I might be able to ironically appreciate.
Yeah. Do you know what Katy Perry should do? Have you seen that video where they splice Firework with a Periphery song?
No.
They take her vocals and put it over a Periphery instrumental. It works exceptionally well. Like it doesn't even sound like a mashup. It just sounds like that's the song.
Is it just as bad as Periphery is usually?
It's actually really good. I don't like their lead singer's vocals at all. So it's a huge improvement, and it works really. I'll have to send you a link. It works really well.
Definitely.
But yeah, anyway, so we, as per usual, are going way off topic.
Yeah. So we should just cut it out now.
Yeah. So TLDR, artists, you can't expect fans to like you, but still, do your own thing. And fans, give bands a shot. You can't don't pigeonhole yourself. Like, you can't expect your tastes and your artists to just completely stay in that small window. I mentioned before. Like, you have to be open to artists doing different things, because they're going to. Like, if you go through life making, I like this band and they're always going to sound like this, right? Like, that's just a dumb way to approach music, because it's almost never the case that a band will completely never change their sound.
Yeah.
Unless you listen to specific genres, some bands in death metal or whatever. But
or
even then,
or like a ska band.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't listen to ska.
Hey.
I know. I used to be a huge ska fan, but
I wasn't even thinking. I was just thinking Rancid technically counts as ska.
Rancid.
Ska
I like Rancid. Yeah. The special.
Out Come the Wolves is a great album. So
the Specials, English Beat, stuff like that. But yeah. Modern ska. Was definitely a transitional period for me in terms of my musical taste. But
that's what I think of your whole deathcore thing too.
Yeah, that was an important transitional phase.
Yeah.
But ska was just kind of
Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks so much
Yeah.
for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts and in the comments. And yeah, thanks again for sticking around.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Torture guard.